I've been very impressed by this Terran player lately. I mean, the SCV juggling at the very start of this game on the rightmost mineral fields was not the most impressive, but look, that's hardly a big deal. Spotting right here in the bottom left-hand corner in game number 1 on Persephone. Playing with the blue SCVs. We're looking inside of the main base of Percival. Up in the top left, one of the world's very best Zergs. Playing in red, we have Reynor. Now, recently, Reynor played a match against Maru, where Maru ended up going for a Proxy 3 Rex. This is looking like a Proxy 2 Rex instead, fair enough. It's in a slightly different position than where Maru put it, fair enough. Reynor is sending OV, the first one that is, in this direction. Problem is, I don't think it's gonna be spotted. Okay, Percival came prepared. Oh, never mind. He did come prepared, but then the Overlord got rerouted. He probably has been checking what Reynor's tendencies are, and what is really nice right here for the Zerg is that a building Terran structure does not have nearly as much vision range as that Overlord, so Percival doesn't know that he's been spotted. Now, we do have these 2 barracks pinned up against the wall, meaning that there's very little surface area for the drones to actually attack into. Yeah, and if both of the SCVs are kind of hiding on the back, it's gonna be difficult to actually attack it. One of the barracks is gonna finish for sure. What about the second one? Okay, one SCV dies. If the second SCV dies as well... yeah, you may as well, you may as well just leave. Yeah, this is horrible for Percival. At the very least, it's now only a single Rex, and he can go for the command center at home, and he can build an orbital command, right? Because in order to go for an orbital, it doesn't matter where the barracks is built. So at least we can begin the mule production, but the original game plan was to go for a little bit of cheese, and it turns out Reynor hates cheese. Yeah. Very uncommon, honestly, especially for an Italian. Italians definitely like to put parmesan on everything, right? But anyways, it is what it is. We're gonna see, actually, the flight of shame here, too. The barracks is gonna make the very long trek across the map to try and land right over here. Okay. Flying start right now for the Zerg. Now, it's not really a spot where you can just go for an all-in and hope for the best, because Reynor didn't actually make Zergling speed yet. So if he had Zergling speed already coming, and maybe he had like the option to go for a Baneling nest, a Baneling bust would actually be very strong. But since that's not really the case here, since he did not actually mine the gas yet, I think just playing it out from a big advantage is the way to go. So you can just kind of relax and make a bunch of drones, get your queen started, maybe make a small group of Zerglings for defense when link speed ultimately finishes, but you're basically under 0 pressure, and you know that the Terran is not going to be able to do too much. Okay. Extra Rex coming up. Yeah, I guess at some point we do need to finish up our upgrades. Starport will likely have to do the most shameful thing for a Starport ever, and that is produce its own add-on. Oh, what? Never mind. Yeah, normally, dude, I think the guys that work in the Starport, like the Starport pilot, he's probably sitting on his high horse right now, and he doesn't like the idea of having to make his own add-on. It's fair enough. They feel like they're better than the barracks guys, you know? They feel like they're better than the factory guys as well. It's fair enough. They're higher tech. But sometimes it's the best thing you can do. Apparently, we did go for the switcheroo, though. Just a Viking for now. No, we're not even going for the switcheroo. Marines are going to be pumped out 3 at a time. And I guess we're still going to have to see a reactor here eventually. But you can see that Percival is now forced to go just for whatever he can produce, right? And the problem is, Zerg is already outgrowing you. The creep spread is going to be hard to stop with only 2 Hellions. Likewise, you know that the Liberator is unlikely to really get any damage done. Unless Reynor decides to skip out on spores altogether, but even then, there's still going to be queens out. Upgrade already coming. Link speed is going to be finished here. And honestly, as long as Reynor gets something like Baneling speed up at a reasonable time, so he doesn't really have to rush it, but as long as Baneling speed finishes within like the next 4 minutes, it's probably going to be fine. Still, We do get a little bit of a, advantage here with this one Viking. The one Viking in charge of supply blocking the Zerg for hours. He kills 2. It's better than nothing. Lair begins right now, though, and I'm expecting a Baneling nest here in just a moment. Reynor will have a rough understanding of when Stimpak is supposed to finish now. So, assuming the barracks flies back home, when does Stimpak finish, right? When do you really expect the next push from the Terran? Probably no sooner than, like, minute 6. So up until that point, Reynor can effectively make queens, drones, and upgrades. And that's effectively all he's done thus far. You probably do need about 30 Zerglings, though. Yeah, give or take. Against whatever push Terran has got prepared. But for now, this is Zerg player. The Zerg player just chilling and having a good time. Gets to play a bit of macro simulator now. 4th hatchery in the far top right. Yeah, and sometimes I see people asking, right? Especially if you haven't watched a lot of StarCraft or maybe you haven't played that much. Why do we see pro gamers leaving early, right? Why do they tap out fast? Well, at this point, Percival really has one option, and it's to go for some sort of all-in. I think that's what he's executing, and I really like that he decided to give this a shot, but I'm also afraid that it's just gonna get absolutely destroyed. But only time will tell. It is certainly possible that Zerg makes a big mistake here, and you don't have quite enough units. This Baneling speed upgrade, for example, is by no means the quickest. I have noticed a couple of slipped injects here by the Zerg player too. But Queens and Lings alone are probably going to be good enough. The Banelings are just going to be the cherry on top. And there's already a bunch of them out. Percival is going to go for a push towards the 4th. I don't really love that. At this point, even killing the 4th does nothing. Because he doesn't have a 3rd base himself. Obviously, he's hoping that maybe he can invite the Zerg over here. What we already have, though, is Lings getting ready for a surround. Hellions do spot it in time. The speed-up circles are extremely good. Yeah, Reynor gives up on the base altogether, which I think is the smartest choice. He knows that Terran doesn't have a 3rd, so why bother trying to save the 4th? He's even remaking one as well, so yeah, we can just relax and maybe try to drag the Terran deeper onto the creep than what they were originally planning on. And now Baneling speed is done. Now the +1 armor is finished. We do have a bunch of reinforcing units over there, but Reynor trying to wait until the absolute last possible moment. Now he commits. Percival just looked away at the worst possible time as well. Unfortunately for him, he saves one of the tanks. The other half of the Terran army is moving in towards the left. And while if you look at just the supply count, right? If you look at just like the overall game, this doesn't seem that awful for Percival. But it's just so hard to get back in a match of StarCraft 2. Like, if you want to criticize StarCraft 2 for anything, I do believe that the amount of comeback mechanics are probably a little too low. There's very little ways to try and drag your way back into a match if you are far behind, but it's partly due to the fact that the top-level players are just really good. Like, if you are indeed failing your proxy cheese as a Terran player in Silver League, sure, you can still come back, right? But Reynor has played tens of thousands of games of Zerg versus Terran. It would certainly be a big error on his part to, give up an advantage as big as the one from the early game. GG gets called right now, and Reynor does get a pretty swift 1-0 advantage. Okay, so that takes us to Tokamak. Will the SCVs chill inside of the main this time around? Okay, all right. Everything's fine. Everything's safe. I think it's the right call to make. It's a good attempt, though, right? Obviously, you always know that it's gotta be a bit of a long shot, especially a double Rex. I honestly don't know how I feel about double Rex cheeses in the first place. So when Maru did it, it was a triple Rex all-in. And spoiler alert for that particular match, I highly recommend you go check out the series. It's up on my YouTube channel. Reynor versus Maru, absolute banger. Anyway, Maru went for a triple Rex all-in, and it did work then. I feel like a double Rex opener, especially with Marines, is just kind of whatever. Like, even in the worst case scenario, if Zerg doesn't scout it, I still feel like they're not quite in the worst position ever, because Zerg can still usually at least make something happen. It's not the absolute worst case scenario then. Whereas with a triple Rex, if you don't scout it, it's extremely hard to hold. Anyway. It didn't work for Percival because he got scouted. 4 vicious workers having a taste for blood, and they never gave up on it. Hatchery first into a gas geyser, into a spawning pool for Reynor. We have a depot into a Rex. Gas geyser as well inside of the main base. Then we're going to see a good old command center on the low ground here at 400 minerals. Very expensive. If you compare it to the hatchery is only 275 minerals. Blizzard? Hello? I guess you have to pay the cost of the drone as well. Plus any potential mining that it does throughout the match. But it is certainly a little bit cheaper for Zerg to be making hatcheries than it is for both Terran as well as Protoss. Looks like Reynor is thinking about going straight into a third. Percival, by the way, not too worried about that first game, it seems. He did not start this game off with an SCV scout. It will be something that Reynor will pick up on as well. Percival, though, does see the timing here of the third. That is indicative here for Terran that the Zergling speed is going to be delayed. It means that you can be a little bit more aggressive. And obviously, the Queens are going to be out in a moment to shoo away the first Reaper. Oh, we go Marine production yet again. So it's a double barracks opener here for Percival. Percival actually doing some weird stuff here. His strategy of choice in game 1, a little bit odd. Like, this used to be a very common build. Remember I think that's what it is anyways. Remember the good old 2-1-1 opener for Terran? The 16 Marine drop? So you go for 2 Rexes like this, you get the quick Stimpak, then you add on a starport as soon as you get 100 gas. Reactor onto the factory, and then into a double medevac production. You can hit on the other side of the map with 16 Marines, Stimpak, and 2 medevacs at about 510 or so. So that'll be the time we're looking at here for Percival. But this is a build that I have not seen as part of the meta in years. Like, it's not really going to go anywhere anytime soon either. It's never going to be bad, but it has certainly fallen out of favor. Now, I kind of like it that Percival decides to go and bring back the good old cheese. It's not really cheese, I guess, but it is certainly committed aggression. Committed pressure, let's call it that, right? Because if you deal no damage, Zerg is gonna run away with a very significant lead. Now, was that starport very late? It felt late to me. Double medevac production, though, coming in, so you're supposed to arrive with perfect execution a little bit past minute 5, depending on the size of the map. What Percival is doing very well here is hiding the counter of the Marines. So he's trying to, hide the count of the Marines instead. So he's trying to make sure that not a lot of those units get spotted. There's the last batch of Marines finishing up right now. Double medevac. Pick him up, pick him up, pick him up. And go. Sorry, Jimmy. Or actually, maybe this is good for you, because these units are likely to die. Immediately gets spotted, though, for Reynor, who now is going to fire up Zergling production immediately. Usually you need about 30 Zerglings to try and deal with this as a Zerg player. Reynor at this point doesn't yet have enough, and he even has a supply block right now because of that Overlord falling. There are plenty of Queens, though. 8 Queens in total. Queens on the medevacs, Zerglings on the units. That is the normal way of dealing with this. You do not need Banelings. You do not really need much of anything. Yeah, you kind of see why it's not a very popular strat anymore, right? It has potential, but as soon as Zerg doesn't scout it, you don't really know exactly what's going on, but what you do see is the lack of Hellions. And immediately the creep spread goes unchecked because of it. Now we have to use a scan to try and get some of those tumors out. Medevac, by the way, on the back of this too with a Widow Mine now. It's not a bad strategy. But it's also... If it was like in a tier list, I think it's like a C tier build at the best. Now lately, We have seen a lot of Terran players and Protoss players alike win with what I consider C-tier builds. Especially, for example, the Marus of the world, the Heroes of the world. They've been going for some very weird build orders in general, but... like, this is weird, but not, like, very weird. You know? It's, like, a little bit strange, but still reasonably tame. And now we end up in a spot that is remarkably similar as the one that we were previously on Persephone, where Zerg is ahead economically. There is no third command center for the Terran player. Baneling speed is moments away from finishing up. And Percival is going up against a Zerg with a ton of creep spread and has effectively put himself into an all-in position. So, what do we do? Do we do like Maru, where we pull the boys and we hope for the best? That's what Maru is doing a lot right now, not just against Protoss, but also against Zerg. A little bit of indecisiveness. This is usually one of the spots for the siege tank. That's another good spot for the siege tank. My god, is this slow. Baneling speed is now finished. Burrow is even coming up. Lings are already preparing for a surround. Yet again, Reynor can give up on his base. He knows that the opponent doesn't have a third. The fourth is up over here. He can transfer the workers towards the left side and be totally fine. And at that point, the only way for Percival to engage would be going deeper onto creep. Is Reynor going to actually give up on it, though? I think he needs to be careful. Those units, those siege tanks here are dangerous. Still, though, the medevac's full. I love the Spore Crawler positioning. No high ground advantage right now for Percival if he doesn't give himself the vision. There we go. Oh no, did he hit a supply block as well? Oh no! Dude, Percival has been playing some fantastic StarCraft over the last month or two. I've been genuinely impressed. I've said several times that if you covered up the usernames, I would have assumed that this was Clem playing. But this is not it. Now, it is worth noting that this was played at an offline stage. Meaning that Percival is playing whilst people can look him in the eyes. Always more uncomfortable, and it may be something that is just not something he's done much before. Looks like some burrowed Banes over here decided to put a little bit more salt in the wounds as well. Reynor is really just still relaxing. Still, though, never count a Terran player out with good units. The problem is very few of those remain. Yeah, we do get some nice little bits of damage here and there. Some good bits of micro. Spire coming up, by the way, for Reynor. That's an extremely late Spire. But I guess Spire is going to be pretty good defensively, too. It does not need it, though, as Percival decides to rip off the Band-Aid. And that will take us to the map Maganatha. Or Maganatha. This may actually be one of the very last times I cast a game on this particular map. If not the last time. I highly doubt the RSL is going to be using this map pool as well for the upcoming season. And I'm fairly certain with this series, I have exhausted all the good games from the replay pack. And there have been some absolute bangers. Now, so far, this series has been quite one-sided. Yeah, this maybe does show you, though, the advantage of being an experienced player. Not just as far as just raw amount of games go, but also when it comes to playing at offline venues. It is very different. Now, obviously, pro gamers will travel with their own mouse and keyboard, their mousepad, and maybe some headphones as well if that's what they desire. But you're always going to be playing at a slightly different setup, right? Like, it's always going to be different. Little things that you would imagine don't really matter. Like, for example, your desk height, or your chair, or even the fact that you are wearing shoes while on a stage. It's actually very common for pro gamers to not wear shoes on stage. I always find it kind of ironic when you see, I don't know, winners of tournaments walking up on stage barefoot, or maybe wearing socks or something like that. It's, you know, they're trying to make it as much as home as possible, but those little things really do have an effect. And obviously you're playing on a different monitor too. There have been quite a few funny moments with that, where The norm, I think, for most tournaments is to run 27-inch monitors at a 2560 by 1440 resolution, rather, and then at 144 hertz, right? Like, that would be kind of the standard, maybe even the norm. But there have been tournaments in the past that only offered 60 hertz monitors. Now, I know some people will call that PC gaming elitism. I've had many discussions about that on stream. Loco, you don't need to run it. Okay, look, a lot of pro gamers will not want to play on a 60 hertz screen in 2025, 2026. It's not what we do. Okay, it's not how we generally play games anymore. Competitive matches, it's extremely beneficial to have a higher frame rate. Likewise, I've also seen many pro gamers that are used to practicing on a 24-inch monitor. So what they will use is like go into the NVIDIA settings or whatever graphics card the computer uses, and they will enable the black bars on the screen. So you will walk around the PC area where the pro gamers are, and a whole lot of them are playing with black bars around the side just to like scale the size of the monitor artificially down to what a 24-inch would look like. It's all these little things. Everybody's got their preferences. Some pro gamers don't care. Like, there have been historically some that just really don't care. I remember specifically Stefano. I've seen several tweets of Stefano back when he used to compete about him saying, hey, on Twitter, he would post like, hey, I forgot my mouse and keyboard. Does anybody have anyone that, like, any that I can, maybe use for the tournament? That's insane to me. That's absolutely ridiculous. Not even being prepared as far as that goes. And then still proceeding to win the whole thing, which is kind of amazing. Oh, by the way, I just noticed my scoreboard is off. Anyways, and then on the flip side, right, on the exact opposite end of the spectrum, you have guys like, for example, Flash in StarCraft 1, who famously, or maybe infamously, always takes a ruler to tournaments, where he will literally set up his computer to be near identical to what it's like at home. And he's extremely precise with it. Like, he will literally bring it. If you Google, like, Flash and then ruler and then StarCraft or something, you'll probably see pictures of it. He will literally bring a ruler to a tournament to bring everything exactly up to scratch to what it's like at home. Now, you can call it maybe overdone. You can call it a little bit too specific, but, yeah, there's something to be said for everything. So anyways, what I'm trying to get at is that Reynor has played offline tournaments for as long as I remember. I think the first time I saw Reynor was WESG Barcelona, where I was one of the commentators. That's the event, at least, where I saw both Reynor as well as Clem for the first time when they were like, I think they were like 14? Already freaking good at the game. Percival, I think, is in his early 20s at this point, and he has done his fair share of offline events. But it's always scary. It's always more intimidating. Bunch of barracks going up inside of the main base for Percival this time around, who did build a third command center nice and early. This is a very large map, of course, so not an easy one to really go for any cheese on. I mean, you could, but trying to get the snipe on the fourth, not quite going to happen. Actually, I remember, if we're talking about hardware, I remember this was only like a handful of years ago, where this was for a Brood War tournament. Apparently, a lot of the Brood War pros were kind of upset about the fact that the motherboard used on the computers that they were supposed to play on for the tournament didn't use, like, what is it called again? The PS2 input? And that they were supposed to use their mouse and keyboard using USB. Anyway, there is technically a limitation for the amount of inputs that you can do simultaneously over USB compared to PS2. I believe that's what the connector is called. For human input, it's practically irrelevant because we're all bottlenecked by, you know, being human. But they generally do have the preference to play on PS2. I don't know if that's still a thing, but I remember hearing a story about that some years ago, and I thought it was very funny. So far, the defense here from Reynor has been good. Likewise, though, for Percival, he is not in a bad spot here. Yeah, technically, a lot of things are lower latency, right? It's the same for, like, wireless mouse versus wired mouse. Pretty much all top-tier pro gamers, in every video game out there will use a wireless mouse. Technically, the latency on a wired mouse can be lower. The problem is, again, human. Being human makes the bottleneck hard, right, for us to notice. There are people out there that claim that they can see the difference between 240 hertz monitors and 480. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. We are the bottleneck in the end. And that's a lovely thing when you think about it. At least for competitive gaming. Alright. Well, Percival has decided to go for a much more macro-oriented style this time around. So, Reynor has been trying to get that 4th base up and running. He has now successfully pulled it off. But he did go, and this is noteworthy, he did skip out on the Banelings, and he went for Infestors instead. Oh, we're rushing up to Ultralisks. Ultras together with Adrenal Glands. Fungal over here, though, and it's not a bad Fungal to start things off. We do have a bunch of Siege Tanks in the back. Fungal does deal a little bit of damage. Siege Tank right over there also dealing friendly fire. We've seen Reynor do this a bunch of times lately, where he just skips out on the Baneling altogether, and he goes for this Mass Ling army instead. Picking up reinforcing units in the middle of the map, too, is big. Keep in mind, though, that he doesn't have great upgrades. As a matter of fact, Percival is ahead in that department. Now fired up to +2/+2. Reynor will finally finish up the +1 melee. Straight into +2, though. My main concern right now is the Ultra. Oh, no. Percival, you may have to unsiege and get out. Ultras, though, are going to hit like an absolute truck. Because of the skipping of the Banelings, Zerg is going to get to Ultralisks even quicker. And while Ultras are rarely a powerful unit in the late game, right, they can still be very handy. They're now going to be spawning at like 9 minutes of in-game time, and Percival does not have like a Ghost Academy, Liberators, or anything like that going yet. That's the big advantage that Reynor gets here from skipping out on those Banelings for the time being and trying to survive with just the Infestors and the Lings alone, and he will successfully pull it off. And now the Ultralisks will actually be Ultra. These are very quick. The Spire is going to be coming up too. Ghost Academy is added into the mix, so Percival getting the right units at like the normal time. But soon the Chompers are out, and there they are. Now, the one saving grace for Percival is that they won't really be useful until this upgrade is done. But I think if they start marching now, the upgrade will finish up pretty much on time. One way to keep the Zerg player at home, though, is with the continued aggression here, which I do quite like. Here goes the Zerg Swarm. Ooh, a couple of Lings will sacrifice themselves. These Lings do have Adrenal Glands right now, super early on as well, so it does mean that they get about a 40% Ling speed attack. Oh, gee, this is really bad for Percival. The Chompers are still used right now, but for base defense instead. Fungal over here too. Oh, Medivacs almost take the beating there from the Widowmine itself. They did get softened, but look at the minimap. Everything is blinking in red for Percival, who is just getting utterly destroyed. Wow. Okay. So Reynor just wiped the floor with Percival. I think this proves that the vibes in offline tournaments are very different than the ones in online tournaments. Yeah, Percival didn't necessarily play poorly, but you can see that Reynor here is barely affected by having to play in front of a crowd, right? Like, there have always been people, I feel like, for example, guys like Cyril. I know I give Cyril as an example a lot, but Cyril seems to actually power up at offline tournaments. Most people play at, like, a slight bit less efficiency. Like, say if you're playing at a home and you're playing an online event, if that is, like, 100% performance, I think somebody like Reynor probably plays at, like, 98, right? Like maybe 98%. Percival right here, maybe 70% or so. Some players, though, can power up at offline events. We see the same, for example, as well from Maru. Maru seems to be playing better at offline tournaments than he does at online events. Now, it could just be that the opposition plays slightly worse, right? And you have some time to usually prepare and maybe mind game your opponent a little bit more in person. But yeah, there's no denying that this was not the strongest showing of Percival, but at least it's a little bit of experience under his belt.